Okay, go ahead.
I'm glad you brought me on this one. This is one of the funniest and funnest ones.
Serious
this
issues.
Is a depressing episode.
We choose heavy subjects sometimes, and sometimes it works out where we could like kind of be a little lighthearted, and then other times we're just backdropping.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 27th episode of But Why Though, a philosophy-themed comedy podcast with comedian Josh Carter
and philosopher Nayanci Lopez.
And today, we're joined by my professor from Brooklyn College, Isabel Rodriguez. She's a native New Yorker with a Bachelor's of Science in Community Health Education from York College, of the City University of New York, and a Master of Public Health from SUNY Downstate School of Public Health. She has been teaching at Brooklyn College since 2012 and has over 15 years of experience in public health and community health education. In 2020, she worked as a public health legislative fellow in the United States Senator Mazi Hirono's office, a unique experience during the COVID-19 pandemic. She's currently working in a nonprofit healthcare organization managing diabetes prevention program in Maryland.
And my good friend Lucas Connolly, he is a New York City comedy veteran. You've seen him on CISO's New York Funniest Comedians in 2016. He was on Comedy Central's New York and South Beach comedy festivals, and he's won the National Lampoon's Joke Off back in 2011. He's been featured on a commercial for Joe's Crab Shack. I love Joe's Crab Shack. Lucas Connolly, everyone joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, they paid me one lump sum. I should probably get that out of my bio because they don't give me no money or free crab.
Yeah, like if this episode blows up Joe's Crab Shack, at least give us all a dinner, you know.
So today we're going to be discussing COVID-19 and mental health and different things that have been going on. So you wanted to bring up a story.
Yeah,
Josh.
One thing that I saw that was happening in the news that was kind of actually like crazy. I think this should be big news and no one's talking about it. You guys are familiar with Skid Row in LA? It's like a 1 mile square block basically where it's just all homelessness and like a lot of mental illness. It's apparently like according to the show on Netflix about the Cecil Hotel, which takes place in Skid Row, it's the most dangerous square mile in like the whole country, even like worse than any place you could think of in Detroit or St. Louis or anything like that. Like right in LA, it's like 23% of like the homeless population in LA lives in this one like tiny little enclave. So basically an activist group just actually was able to push through and get a judge in LA County to push through a $1 billion kind of like program to move all these people off the streets like within like a certain set amount of time. This has been like a problem for decades, the most dangerous area in the city, finally cleaning it up. And now the mayor of LA is pushing back. This is what he's saying. This is some crazy shit right here. Just listen to this. This is what he's saying. He's saying he wants to people are mad because it's $1 billion they're giving. People are complaining that it's going to take away from all the stuff that's already going on with like LA trying to help poor people or whatever. But it's a $32 billion budget. 1/32 of the city's homelessness seems like an issue that more than 1/32 of the city's budget should be going, especially in a city like LA with such a huge problem. Like it's way worse there than here in New York. But anyway, this is what the mayor says. He says he wanted to sit down and work out a settlement. As those discussions proceed, local officials need to think carefully about what comes next. Giving homeless people, including disproportionate number of black people in that population, interim shelter may get them off the dirty sidewalk, at least temporarily, but it won't be enough to put them on a path towards some semblance of a sustainable, decent life. The problems of homeless people on Skid Row and across the region require more than one judge's preliminary injunction. That's like the craziest shit I've ever heard. So basically what this guy is saying is don't put these homeless people in buildings or they're going to be homeless. Leave them on the street. That's what they need. Because if you put them in buildings, they're going to come out of the buildings. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. What? I don't get it. Go ahead.
It's actually not that dumb. A lot of people that are picked up off of the street, as you're calling it, end up going back. And the reason is that it's a Band-Aid fix. You're forcing people into shelter that may be subpar to the street, believe it or not. Some of these shelters are more dangerous than them living on the street. And you're not really addressing the issues that got them into living on the streets in the first place. So there are a lot of other reasons why people are upset. There's always money involved and everyone has their hand in that pocket. But critics are saying that it's going to take away from the longer term solutions that the city was planning on establishing. So you're going to take the money and just put people into temporary shelters and not solve the long-term issues that will follow. I have mixed feelings about it. I agree that everyone should have safe housing, but there are other reasons why people end up on the street. So I think that this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, as a former homeless person, I wasn't homeless because there wasn't a place for me to go. I was homeless because they wouldn't let me do drugs everywhere I went.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You go into one of these homes, they're not going to let you just do drugs.
Yeah, but I guess when I hear the $1 billion budget, I guess in my head I'm assuming that it's like that it's like some kind of mental health like reclamation, or they're going to help the people who are addicted, or it's some kind of like rehab program.
Well,
it's way more money than that. It's way more money than that. You might be surprised. It probably each person that would claim a drug problem is a $40,000 to $60,000 stamp on each person that's in that area that could claim that they have a drug problem. That's not even close probably to that $1 billion.
Oh, well, I guess all that anger was misdirected then.
It's not necessarily. The thing is, we really don't have a good solution to major big groups of people being addicted like that. Like Canada has some really interesting studies and like exercises they've done where they've like given people like all people who can claim that they're like an alcoholic, they'll like give them a drink every hour.
Mm.
And like these guys will actually stop drinking, but like that's not this program. I'm sure it's not that program. That works in a community of like 20 or 30 people.
Hmm.
I think, this is more towards the temporary housing. So, when they're unable to, because I read the article, the story on this too, and it talks about mobile homes or, kind of these short fixes, just
like
a temporary fix.
I thought they were building.
Right. And they do a lot of.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't. Go ahead.
No, a lot of single occupancy residencies where it's literally a room and a shared bathroom kind of thing. This is what a lot of times gets developed, but nothing is put in place to address substance use issues or, job readiness or job training or getting people to be self-sufficient so that they don't have to stay in the shelter system for a long time.
Mm-hmm. But do you guys think that doing this would be a good step forward, or do you think it should be approached in a different way completely?
I think it's very complicated.
It's complicated, yeah.
Very, very complicated. I think the first thing that would be best is that probably they should legalize drugs, and then they could give a chance to tax all those drugs, and then they could spend all that money on rehab.
That's a great idea.
But that's a policy that not many, you just imagine the way that spin that, wow, your kids are now going to be able to just buy crack cocaine from Walgreens, right? You can just see it being sold terribly. But
well, I'd imagine even if a thing like that passed, crack wouldn't be included.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, let's move on. Yeah, so basically the question, I forgot to even get to the question part of it. The question was, has the government failed from those suffering from mental illness for years? Sorry.
Yes.
So yeah.
Failed those suffering.
Absolutely. The statistics are always astonishing, but the response and the resources that are placed to address those numbers don't match, right? They fall short. And in 2019, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, identified that mental health trends for the U.S. were showing 1 in 5 adults having a mental health illness, 18% living with anxiety disorders, 7% living with major depression, 1 out of 5 young people, 13 to 18, living with a mental health condition, of which 37% of the 14 to 18-year-olds drop out of school, and 70% of young people in juvenile systems being children with a mental illness. So we definitely have not addressed the issues. And we see this in the adult population too, with the number of people that are incarcerated. It's a vicious cycle. People go from, the street into a prison system and then back out, and nothing is done in between to help them get on their feet or to provide them the treatment that they need for their mental health illness. That's the part people don't associate mental health with part of your health when it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, I don't know if I from a guy who does have mental health problems, if you've ever been on like me on Medicaid, and go into one of those psychiatry offices, it makes you never want to go and get psychiatric help ever again. It is terrible. They are overrun. They have 20 to 30 clients a day. They walk in, they go, "Are you okay?" You go, "Yep." They go, "Cool, here's your script for next month." And they try to get you out the door as quickly as they possibly can.
Wow.
And these aren't even the pill mills ones, which are even worse than that. The system is completely broken in that way. Because it's we're shamed for it. We're shamed for being mentally ill. We're shamed to live in debt. We're shamed to be there's all kinds of things that in our society are shame based that are completely out of our control.
Yeah, I agree. And there's also a parity issue in terms of how payments are made for mental health and behavioral health providers. They don't get the same amount of money from insurance companies, which is why they treat these services and these patients different than they would someone coming in for blood pressure or a heart disease or something along those lines. There have been strides made to try to even out the playing field and create more oversight. Massachusetts just last year sued large insurance companies and behavioral health companies for having inaccurate provider directories, for example, under reimbursing the mental health services that were provided and requiring things like a prior authorization for behavioral health visits when they didn't require them for regular health care. So all of these things impact, the quality and the way we offer or the way people, seek behavioral health and mental health care.
My insurance lapsed about 3 years ago, and I went in. Gave me an appointment. Then they hounded me for money for months, asking me for $300 for an appointment that was completely free. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not paying you that. You shouldn't have let me even walk in and get the appointment."
Yeah.
They told you after?
Yep.
What?
They've done that to me with some bullshit
God.
too.
Oh,
Yeah. So the system is really that system of whatever they have too many paperwork or something's going the paperwork system's messed up. The communication with the insurance and with the pharmacies is messed up. All those systems need to be almost dismantled and restarted from zero, because you can't just fix them. They're corrupted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely need to reconstruct a lot of things.
Everything,
I think. Everything. Yeah. So
Yep.
what we wanted to look at was at the CDC.
And this is everything before COVID-19 too. So we're not just getting into now.
At the CDC report from 2020 and one from 2021. And as we were mentioning, they found that U.S. adults reported considerably elevated adverse mental health conditions associated with COVID-19. Younger adults, racial, ethnic minorities, essential workers, and unpaid adult caregivers reported having experienced disproportionately worse mental health outcomes, increased substance use, and elevated suicidal ideation. So the percentage of respondents who reported having seriously considered suicide in the 30 days before completing the survey was significantly higher for respondents aged from 18 to 24. Minority racial ethnic groups was 18%, and then also self-reported unpaid caregivers for adults and essential workers, they were at 30 and 21%. But those aged 18 to 24 were at 25%. So what I wanted to ask you guys is, why do you think that young people have such high reports of contemplating suicide? Is there something that we're doing as a society to cause this? Are we, I don't know,
Something
maybe
we could do to change it and improve
yes,
it?
something that we could do to change this as a society. Are we pressuring young people too much, or
Yeah. Well,
what do you guys think?
this is all capitalism at its finest, right? If you're not making money, you're not doing well, right? Right. It's all rooted in it's deeply rooted in capitalism, right? So if you aren't providing, if you're not making a certain amount of number, if you're not working towards a financial goal, like Josh, me and you know what that is, right? We're like comedians, right? But we're not, there's a number we're supposed to hit as like a professional comedian, and then you can finally be one, right? Right. And it's like, it's that deep rooted kind of thing in our society that's so messed up, right? It's not about like, do you have loved ones that care about you? No, it's always about what do you own?
I think
right. When can you retire?
And I think it's not just that. I think it's like a part of like how our whole society, our whole culture has kind of evolved. Like think about like people like my age, like or in your age, Lucas, people like even in their 30s, we've grown up so much differently than even my parents. Like my parents had me and were ready to have me, and they were financially ready and all that at like 27 years old or whatever. And they weren't, I'm not saying they were financially ready. Actually, they weren't. I don't know what I'm talking about. But it wasn't as hard. It wasn't as crazy as if I were to have a kid like now. But like we're like trained to have a career, like both like also I think it was like a little bit the sexism back then, like people kind of like leaned on women a little bit to get half the work done at the house. And then I guess there were enough jobs back in the lower population back in the day, and somehow it worked for a couple years. But now everyone's trying to get a job. We're all trying to compete. It's hard to find love. Then like we're in your 30s and you still haven't found like someone that you could think you could spend your rest of your life with. And you're like, wait, but my parents did. But then you forget that your parents didn't have to do all the shit that you're doing. Like you have to have 3 jobs and apart. Like I think all this this is just my theory.
Yeah. I agree. I think that we're seeing this increase in substance use and suicidal ideation in the 18 to 24-year-olds versus the slightly older adults, which some 18-year-olds would call me a senior citizen, but we're not gonna go into that. But it's because we don't support young people. What happens on the eve of your 18th birthday that says that tomorrow you will have life figured out? Nothing. It's no different when you're 17 and 364 days old versus when you turn 18. So the expectation and the pressure that we put, and social media has a lot to do with this, right? Kids are so into social media that they think that everything that they see is true because they saw it on social media. Nayanci has never done this, but some of my students have tried to use Instagram or TikTok or Facebook as a source for their academic writing. Everything that's on social media is not, reality. So we don't do enough to support children. I agree. We don't do enough to educate them, to teach them about the society that they will be adults in, right? We don't teach them about financial literacy. We don't teach them about health. I mean, we don't even really do physical activity in schools most of the time. We serve them crap for lunch and expect them to grow up and be healthy and self-sufficient adults. We make them go to college, promising them that a college degree will get them everything, when the reality is that it doesn't. And now you have $40,000 or more in student debt. So we don't prepare them. We don't, educate them and groom them to be the adults that we expect them to be. the second they hit 22. What happens at 22? Nothing. You're still an adolescent at 18. It doesn't change. You don't become just an adult and have everything figured out. You're still growing at that point. So I think we definitely need to do more in terms of the social support and the social services that we offer our young people.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a real problem in our society that and this is more so than ever now, there's zero mentorship. Back extreme mentorship. Learn something, there would be an elder, like an elder statesman or whatever, an elder in a community for their wing how to do the thing. Josh, how many times have we been doing comedy and there's big famous people and they ignore us and do whatever they're going to do and then they leave, right? That's that system of hierarchy, right? No one's out there trying to help each other, right? There's nothing you do that.
Yeah,
I use my reference, and I was in the arts too, right? Like, well, you better get a really good before I did it. It made no sense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Luke.
No problem.
I didn't. Half of that shit cut out. I didn't hear it. I didn't. I don't understand any of that. I have to be honest. I could nod my head and pretend that I understood any of that.
No, it's cutting out a little bit.
I heard you say something about comedy and the hierarchy, and I was nodding my head because I knew it was something good that you were saying. But
I think I picked up on Lucas saying mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody to show you the ropes and to support you when you're trying to figure things out. Was that the gist of what you were getting at, Lucas?
Basically, that was, and then I used it, and then I had a really, really it was hilarious too, and that's why it hurt so bad because none of you guys laughed. I was just saying nothing.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I gave you the excuse of why. No, but yeah, mentorship is big. I think another part of it is because of like how big of how the population has gotten. It's weird to like hang out with like a young kid if you're like kind of an older guy, right? Like back in the day, I feel like back in the day when my dad was growing up, he could have like an adult mentor when he was like 12 that wasn't in his family, who kind of like showed him the ropes of how to do this and that, like this hustle and that hustle. Like that's kind of sketchy to do now, right? Like I wouldn't have my 12-year-old like hang out with some 30-year-old, or like even in your teenage years, you know?
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
that would be
it's also interesting. Yeah, to go back to why young people are suffering a little bit more, you got to think about when you were that age, right? I'm assuming that all of you are you're in that age group, or you just made it out of that age group, right? But when you're that age, you want to hang out with your friends, right? And this past year has been really difficult. These are people that are straight out of high school, right? All you've known is hanging out with your peers. Not having a job, maybe. Some kids, I started working when I was 16, so I definitely knew what having a little weekend job was, but I was still hanging out with my friends and everything was about socializing. And then the pandemic hit and you have a bunch of awkward teenagers with, still dealing with raging hormones and figuring out who they are, and everything that they know has shut down and they're forced to, yes, they're used to computers. It's better than older people having to adjust to working from home, for example, but it's very different. And a lot of children and young adults could not deal with that this past year.
Yeah, I remember.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, my little sister, she's in high school and it wasn't good for her. She was like, I can't hang out with my friends. I don't know what to do. And it was hard for her to focus in class also. So it's difficult for a lot of children.
I also noticed, and I'm not in that age group that we're talking about, but I noticed that a lot of people I considered my friends because I just saw them on a regular basis during the pandemic, we didn't talk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's interesting, right?
It's a huge thing where I was like, oh yeah, if we didn't have like a reason to run into each other, we didn't act like we were activity partners.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that was the only reason why we were doing anything. And I was like, wow. And I was like, and just think about someone who's 18, who's, isn't getting that, doesn't understand, doesn't have like the rationing skills, the social skills, or like the knowledge that they probably should go to therapy or something.
That's true. Yeah, imagine like at that 18-year-old level where you probably think everyone's hating you just because you're not hearing from people every day and stuff like that.
Yeah, that must be tough. But we'll move on to our next topic.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm glad you brought me on this one. This is one of the funniest and funnest ones.
Serious
this
issues.
Is a depressing episode.
We choose heavy subjects sometimes, and sometimes it works out where we could like kind of be a little lighthearted, and other times we're just fact dropping.
Yeah, we're keeping it interesting.
Well, hey, comedy also could just mean comedians' opinions, right?
Yeah.
This is
bad
true.
comedy.
So during January 20th, 2021, this was a study in February, more than 2 in 5 adults aged above the age of 18 experienced symptoms of anxiety or a depressive disorder during the past 7 days. 1 in 4 adults who experienced these symptoms reported that they needed but did not receive counseling or therapy for their mental health. So I wanted to ask you guys, why do you think a lot of people are not receiving treatment? Is there a solution for this, or is it because they don't want to, or they don't have the time to? What do you guys think? Or they're not diagnosed?
Well, I'd assumed like during the pandemic, everything shut down. Like I got into a car accident like right before the pandemic, and I was supposed to be in like physical therapy and chiropractor. And like basically when the pandemic happened, I just had to stop going into the office. Then I stopped going in. Then even when the office reopened, I was just like too lazy to go out at that point. I don't want to go, and I don't want to risk going into some doctor's office also. And I bet you for mental health, it's even more like that, because I'm sure a lot of these people are also super paranoid about what's going on. And I'm sure that's a side effect for some of the stuff that they're dealing with too. I'm paranoid. I mean, I could also be mentally unhealthy. I don't know, but I'm paranoid about going into places and stuff. And when that pandemic first happened, Trump was in office. We didn't know what's real and what's not. We don't know what's political. We don't know what's the real facts. Like people still are. Tucker Carlson recently just told people to confront people who are wearing masks on his show. That's crazy.
What?
I saw that. Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Like, who know? Like people just don't know what's going on.
that's ridiculous. Yeah. No, we definitely have touched on a lot of things, but you brought up, just the political climate that we were in when the pandemic started. But there's still a lot of stigma, like Lucas was mentioning, a lot of stigma around mental health. We've made some progress, but a lot of people still don't understand mental illness and associate it with weakness or with shame, something that we don't see happening if someone, for example, has high blood pressure or breaks a leg or gets into some type of accident and has an injury, right? Like Josh. We don't see that as a weakness or something to be ashamed of. So I think this is my public health angle for everything, right? I think we need more education at all levels for individuals, in schools, for employers, for health departments, for local government officials. We need to think of mental health as part of your overall health and stop diminishing mental health issues and move away from negative environments that promote anxiety and stress. The U.S. has this rat race. I recently moved out of New York right before the pandemic. Yippee, I'm so smart. It's a rat race, and everything is go, go, go. And how much money, right? Lucas alluded to this. How much money can you earn? And what belongings do you have? And are you keeping up with the Joneses? And literally your whole day was spent when we had to actually go outside, commuting to work, busting your ass at work, then commuting back home. And you didn't have time for anything else. So, we need to kind of take the approach of shorter work weeks and realizing what's important in life and not putting all this priority on these stressful environments. And right, if anything, the pandemic taught us that we could do our jobs from home for most of us, right? Everything that was argued before for working from home was kind of dispelled during the pandemic. Productivity didn't go down the crapper. People were still doing their job. Unless you were an essential worker and you had to go in, then there was no change other than fear for your life, which again contributes to mental health issues. So, we need to really be more progressive in the way that we manage our human resources in workplaces, more education on mental health, mental health training for first responders, including the police, especially with everything that we've seen, increasing payment and reimbursements for mental health services. I mean, the return on investment on these kinds of solutions is really great. There's no reason, it's just like public health, no reason to underfund these preventative and these services that are going to benefit the community as a whole.
Mhm.
The story I that this reminds me of is, do you know about the person that slipped in the Walmart and then they sued Walmart?
Oh, I think I heard about that.
You know the story? It's a story that everybody knows, right? Person, oh, you could just slip in Walmart and get $1 million. But they kind of gave it the stigma, right? Like there's a bunch of people who did that. There's one person who did that. There's one person that slipped in Walmart and got $1 million. But they made it out. They did this whole PR team thing to make people think that this is just like a bunch of lazy people slipping in Walmart trying to get a payday, right? And somebody who's way up there has made a stigma about mental health, right? If you say that you're mentally unhealthy, they're going to fire you and they're going to get rid of your job and they're going to do this. And none of that is true from my understanding. If you can go into your job and say, if you have a job that you've had for like whatever the minimum 3 months or something, if you say that you're having a manic episode, they have to not only allow you to leave to get help, they have to like give you space and time and accommodate you. But like you get told again, oh, if you tell them that, they'll just fire you immediately. And I guess maybe like somewhere like New York where it's like no fault.
If it's some shitty like ass boss, maybe like, but then you could probably sue them if you want to drag that out.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. And that's the thing. But we got taught this kind of thing. Oh, if you tell them, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah, it definitely has been stigmatized. And in the Latino community too, I think. I remember when I was young, people would say, oh, if you go to a psychologist, you're crazy. Or only crazy people do that, or you won't be able to get a job, stuff like that. So, but, later on, as I learned and studied and learned more about life, I realized it's, normal. But yeah, this is what we need to show kids, I think, from a young age, because mental health is important since you're young, I think. It's not something that we should start paying attention to later on in life.
It's ironic. I feel like if we treated mental health differently and didn't stigmatize it, there'd just be a lot better of it. There'd be like a lot less mental unhealthiness out there. Like, I feel like it just helps contribute to it in a way, like the pressure of it,
Yeah. It would probably flip what the norm is, right? Everyone has baggage and things that if they don't go to therapy or have someone that they can talk to about, it's just going to end up in some way or fashion being you guys curse, so a fucked up adult and passing that along to the children that they raise. So there's nothing wrong with therapy. And yes, culture plays a big role in it. I agree. If you're talking to a therapist, if you're depressed, you get told, just pick yourself up, just be happy, don't worry about it, like get over it, just pray, all these things that are supposed to magically make you better. And that's not how it works.
Mm-hmm. So I'll move on to our next question that I wanted to bring up. So these findings are consistent with results from surveys conducted early in the COVID-19 pandemic from March to June 2020. That showed an increased prevalence of mental health symptoms, especially among young adults. The more recent results indicate an increasing prevalence over time later in 2020, which remained increased in early 2021. The trends in symptoms of an anxiety or a depressive disorder from HPS have been shown to be consistent with trends in the weekly number of reported COVID-19 cases. And it has been theorized that increases in these mental health indicators correspond with pandemic trends. So I wanted to ask you guys, do you think that mental health mirrors the number of COVID-19 cases in a way? Or do you think the number of mental health cases, or why do you think it continues to rise? Do you think there's another reason aside from that?
I think I could definitely contribute. Maybe like seeing the number going up, especially in the beginning, of it on the news could have factored in maybe. But I think
Yeah.
I bet you want to hear something ironic that I don't know if this is true or not, but this is just an opinion that I'd be willing to put a bet on, especially if I got good odds back. I bet you the reopening is going to contribute to mental health because people aren't going to want to go out again. It's like getting out of jail remember in the Shawshank Redemption, the old guy got out of jail and he didn't know how to reassimilate. Like it kind of, in a way, feels like we've all been prisoner for a year. Or depending on how you look at it, some people are looking at it like a vacation for a year, but like I guess it depends on
it depends.
How your year's been.
There will definitely be some anxiety about going back to the office, especially, when the cases are not going down. So now you're telling me I have to go and sit next to Susan and Bob, and I don't know if they're vaccinated or not, and we have to sit in this small room next to each other because you think it's good for the economy when we've been doing our job at home for the past year. So definitely there will be anxiety around that, but it's been just an unprecedented time. So this has been the biggest challenge that many people have faced in their lives, right? Many young people, older people maybe have been through worse things, but for younger people, this is the challenge that they've had to face. Others, though, especially folks that have been dealing with mental health illness, this is just one struggle on top of many others that they were already facing. And not just people with mental health illness, poor people that were, being harassed and just living in crappy environments. But you pair that with the intensified racial tensions that we've seen, the ability to record the discrimination and racism that's happening. It's not that it didn't happen before, it's that now you can actually hear it and watch it live. Regular citizens taking action against different communities because they're believing what a absurd and lunatic of a president, pardon the calling him, but he definitely has undiagnosed and untreated mental health illnesses. And then you start the year off thinking, okay, new president, new year, who this, right? And it's like, no, insurrection at the Capitol and continued weekly police killings. And then we started getting mass shootings again, which one of the bright sides of the pandemic was that we didn't have mass shootings every other day because everyone was home. Mm-hmm. So you add that with the coverage Josh was mentioning, like the media just covers all this crap 24/7. Of course, the numbers are going to go up. If you keep hearing that the situation is going from bad to worse, what's that going to do for your anxiety? And if you're not getting the help that you need in the first place, how are you supposed to cope with that?
Yeah. And no matter what, I feel like everyone's also been radicalized during this point. Like even like I have my white side of the family are all Republican. Like they're not like they were never super Republican though. My uncle and me argue now over if there's a communist revolution about to take place. Like like, is that crazy? And he owns a big company too for market research and shit. like people who are normal people, like we're now like in our like little like hives, and like every idea that goes around the hive, if you're not in the hive, you're the enemy now. Even things that aren't political. I just invested in SafeMoon. It's a new crypto. It's now everyone's losing friends over whether or not it's a scam or the next big Bitcoin. People just want to be agreed with, and like they have all these crazy like little things that they're doing.
Josh, I don't care what you spend your money on. Go ahead, buy it all.
Josh, I'm done doing this podcast now that I know that you're buying crypto.
How dare you?
You should just keep all your money in
people are yelling at each other over this shit on Twitter, though. Yeah. I'm like, damn, it's not just politics anymore.
Oh, my God.
No, but since you bring up crypto, like the financial instability that we've seen in the past year caused by the pandemic, and it's definitely going to keep mental health issues on, the numbers on the rise. And that's not going to go away now. That's, we're still, people thought that, or I hate when people are saying that we're post-pandemic right now or post-COVID. It's not a post-COVID world. We're still in the thick of it. Those numbers are still really high. People are getting reinfections. We don't know how long these vaccines will last. You have anti-vaxxers. You have, young people and older people who are as naive and less intelligent than they should be based on their years on this earth, that are just acting like super spreaders, going around, because that trip to, Kentucky was really necessary. What's in Kentucky? Sit your ass down. Stay home.
Also, we put $17 trillion in the economy, and then they just gave themselves bonuses. So,
it's like all
it's just, we just printed money to make sure that the stocks didn't go down, but they aren't based on real money. It's based on fake money. Yeah. So it's, there's going to be a huge collapse in whenever we realize that everything we have is fake.
We've always struggled as a nation in putting the money where it's needed. The same goes for healthcare services. We put money in these preventive pots and then go and dig that money and take it for other things as we please. That's just the nature of kind of American government. But if you use it to address the issue that it's intended for, then maybe you'd stop, acting like a dog chasing its tail, going around in circles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is crypto the answer, Josh?
I think so. I think right now, to be safe, this crash Lucas is talking about is imminent. Just store that money in Bitcoin. As the dollar goes down, you'll see that Bitcoin price going up.
Oh my God.
Sorry. All right. We're coming to the end here. I know Lucas is.
So we're at our last point.
All right, we can wrap this up.
So several measures have been initiated to address increased mental health risk associated with COVID-19, including expanded use of telehealth to address mental health conditions during the pandemic. Community-level intervention and prevention efforts should include strengthening economic supports to reduce financial strain, addressing stress from experienced racial discrimination, promoting social correctness, and supporting persons at risk for suicide. Periodic assessment of mental health, substance use, and suicidal ideation should evaluate the prevalence of psychological distress over time, addressing mental health disparities, and preparing support systems to mitigate mental health consequences as the pandemic evolves will continue to be needed urgently. So our final question is, what else do you guys think could be done? Do you think there's anything else that could be done to help the situation? And do you think that someday, eventually, in an ideal world, everyone can have good mental health? Do you think that's possible for us as a society?
I want to hear what they say. I hope so.
So
I'll let Lucas go first because I've been on my professor tip.
Telemedicine is fine. At least from my experience, it's just weird because they will then be all like, cool, well, we still need to do a P test and we still need you to, like certain medications they prescribe, like they have to write it out for you. And there's a lot of things wrong with telemedicine right now, but it's definitely something I would openly encourage anybody to try. But it is definitely an interesting experience. I had to go through, I went through 3 therapists this pandemic. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been harder to find a therapist this past year. Everyone's been booked and busy. We were forced into telehealth. It was something that existed but wasn't being utilized as much, and the pandemic kind of pushed us into the 21st century. We are going to have to focus on the communities that have been hit the hardest. So that, of course, includes communities of color, lower income workers, and something that Josh mentioned earlier about back in the day, women being the ones that did things, and it was something along the lines of your parents being able to start a family because the women were at home taking care of the kids and the house, and we had made so much progress with women in the workplace. And then COVID hit, and they're calling it the she session instead of the recession. because so many women have been forced out of the workplace. Why? Because kids are at home doing Zoom school, and the mother is expected to pick up most of the efforts on that end, or the caregive for someone else because the senior center is now closed and things of that nature. So we're really going to have to try to focus our efforts on the communities that have been hit the hardest, and giving some respect to our essential workers, not just the healthcare workers, but the folks at the supermarkets who really risk their lives to keep us going. Those hardworking people in different industries that are treated as if their lives are invaluable, because they have these lower wage paying jobs, and they went to work fearful of whether or not they would get sick every day and bring that home to their families. So it's going to be a lot of targeted efforts, but we can't afford to exclude people from the services. So we really have to make sure that we get things dollars and things where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always thought has been a challenge. Like, this is my biggest gripe, especially in New York City and LA. I feel like in bureaucracy, the dollars just never get to where they're trying to go without being like stripped down, But I don't know how to fix that. We need a whole new society, but I don't mean to bring shit up that has no solutions. How about I think we could go around and just do a conclusion. We're about out of time anyway. We could go around. You could plug if you have something to plug, like show, podcast, any kind of thing you have online going on, anywhere we could follow you. And if you want, you could give one last final point if you have one. We could start with you, Lucas.
Hey, follow me on social media. It's at Lovable Lucas on almost everything except Instagram, where it's at Lovable Lucas 1. I can't get Lovable Lucas, the full one. It's LUCAS. Some little kid with 50. You know what? I don't need to get into it. You should give it to me though. I run a weekly show in New York on a roof. Come check it out. It's every Tuesday at the Tiny Cupboard. Lastly, there should be no shame in asking for help, and in almost at any time. I know we've been talking a lot about adolescents, and we're definitely talking about different groups, but really asking for help is probably one of the hardest things that almost everybody in our society has a hard time doing. Doesn't matter who you are. We are not taught that saying, I need help, I don't know what's going on, is okay. If you do that, it always feels like you get in more trouble. You get put in special needs classes. You get all kinds of things happen when you say, I need help. And just start saying it a lot more, and it'll make the world a lot easier.
Great point.
And I swear this was not planned, but it's going to sound like it was planned. So I'm going to make a plug for some of those resources where anyone that needs help can get help. So definitely there are national resources. So if anyone is in need of, so not just mental health related, any kind of help, you can call or text 211. It's a comprehensive source of information for local resources across the country, requests for people needing basic needs like housing, food, transportation, and healthcare. So that's a resource. And of course, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255. They also have online chats for all the millennials and people that rather do it online. Veterans Crisis Line is pressing 1 on that number. And in July of 2022, it's going to be a national 988 number commission to make it easier for people to get help. So my last thing, I guess, to try to end on a positive or a lighter note than this whole hour has been, is try not to take yourself or things too seriously. Think of life as an amusement park ride. Sometimes you wait in line forever to get on it. Sometimes the ride that you want breaks down. Sometimes the ride isn't what you expected it to be, but sometimes it's great. And you should remember those great times and those great rides and not be so afraid to get on the damn thing that you never find out. So buckle up and try to have some fun.
Thank you.
That's great. And yeah, that was our episode. You can follow us at BWT Podcast on Instagram Or you can follow me at Gosh Carter. That's GOSHCARTER. And that's both Instagram and Twitter.
And you can follow me at Miss Nayanci, MSNAYANCI on Instagram and Twitter.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.